I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you.
So, I'm red in the face. This book is a hell of a read. First off, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's funny as shit. And the one part of the vignette, which, get the book, right? Get the book. But so you're not going to know about this, but there's a vignette, there's a chapter in there that talks about Dungeons and Dragons.
I'm going to pick that chapter.
You take Dungeons and Dragons sex and you're like, what the fuck is she talking about? But in all sincerity, congratulations on it. This is a hell of an accomplishment. I'm a bit envious. I would have loved to write. I got a couple ideas for books, but I just have not had either the courage or the willpower to do it. So when was the moment that you decided that you were going to do it? I know you have talked in interviews and so forth that your friends were like, you got to do something here. Well, these stories are too good, right? But what was the moment?
It was over years and years. I've always been that girl that was never in a relationship. I was always single girl. I was always jumping from one guy to the next. I was always on Tinder and Plenty of Fish and all these dating sites.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I was on all of them. Just trying.
We'll go there.
Just trying to find the one. And, and when you do that, you meet a wide variety of people. And I would just, get with my girls on Friday night and just tell them about the ridiculous men that I went on dates with or, had sex with. And I would just crack them up because, and they're with their, their boyfriends, bored, married and whatnot. And they're looking at me like, oh, your life is so great. And I'm looking at them like, no, like your life is so great. Like these guys are ridiculous. And so it was just, after that, I'd always crack up my girlfriends and they were like, you need to do comedy or you need to write a book. And I was like, well, doing stand-up scares the shit out of me. I'm like, so I'll write a book. So my goal was always to write a book, but I just never knew how I was going to do that. I'm not a writer. I never went to college or anything. So I'm like, how is someone a little Yinzer like me going to go and, write a book? And it wasn't until I read Tucker Max's Do They Serve Beer in Hell that it was like a light bulb moment. And I feel like I kind of, had my book after his, like the same kind of style, like mine's like the female version of his a little bit. Just, these short stories. And I made it so, it was as if I was talking to my girlfriends, like telling them a story. And it just flowed after I could do it like that.
It's written very conversational, no doubt. It's very authentic. You definitely, that comes through immediately. And it's fucking funny. I mean, so my congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this. So this is a collection of, would you say, dates, not so much relationships, correct? Or mini relationships in there?
Like I want to say, like the longest one in there was maybe like 5 weeks. Like I didn't keep them around long.
And I know from our conversations with you, you don't journal, right? So it isn't like you had a collection of essays that, as you experienced life, you didn't really do it. So you're actually going back and just free formulating this out of your own personal memories.
Yeah, these are my, these are the stories that I would bring out during, girls' night when we're like, like 2 bottles of wine in, and they're like, April, tell me a story. I'm like, who do you want to hear? You want to hear about number 37? Okay, let me tell you about number 37. Let me tell you about, this guy. Let me tell you about West Virginia guy. And it was just like, so I knew these stories. These were stories I've told, thousands of times. So it was easy to, remember them. I remember every dick. So, just, put it like that. And yeah, just the stories they came very easily.
Yeah. So, this book's kind of a reaffirmation of how far I think we have come, thank God, in sexuality and the openness of it in society, especially on the female side, because, 35, 40 years ago, this book probably wouldn't exist. Would you probably agree? Well, you weren't around then, but I mean, from history, would you know?
38.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not around in context. You know what I'm saying? But we certainly come a long way. And
you wouldn't think of that if you looked in the comments section of the Post-Gazette review that I had. You'd think that we were stuck back in 1950 with all the old white conservative males that were appalled that a woman in Pittsburgh would write a book about sex because we don't have sex like that. We don't know. We cut a hole in the sheet, and that's how we have sex. We don't look at nothing. We don't see nothing. I don't know what boobs are. Like, come on, Grandpa, you got 18 kids. Like, why is this so taboo to you? You know.
He spent all that time in the missionary position.
Amazing.
So you blended a little bit of embellishment and storytelling in the stories to make them, I don't know, more appealing or more enjoyable, so to speak. But the essence of everything that happened here is like real people.
Yeah.
Now, naturally, you had to change names to protect the guilty and all that. And you also work at a law firm. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So you were able to get great legal advice?
Yeah. If anyone wants to come at me, I got you. We were in freaking Top Lawyers magazine. Come at me.
So, but generally speaking, you haven't had anyone really contact you about the book? Or?
No, I've been waiting.
I'm fascinated. Yeah, I want some of the guys that are in here to recognize themselves or suspect it's them.
I've been waiting for it. I have a couple guys that I'm still, like Facebook friends with, Instagram friends with, that they know that there's a book out there, and if I have slept with you, there's a good chance you could be in there. But I have, for the life of me, no one has messaged me and like come forth. But they've got to. I guess if they've read the story, they're just not going to admit that they spent the money on my book. And
yeah,
and maybe the male ego it can be very difficult, but
you don't say.
Yeah,
you don't say.
But I'm waiting for it. I've had a couple guys being like, "Am I in the book?" And I'm like, "No, you weren't interesting enough to be in the book." So
that might be the worst ego blow possible. You're kind of damned if you do. You're kind of damned if you do. You're damned if you don't. If you made the book, like, oh fuck, and if you didn't make the book, you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah. And then I've had a couple guys message me and being like, can I be in the sequel? And I'm like,
oh my god.
No.
There's your comedic moment right there.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I got a good man now.
Right on.
You missed the boat, bro.
There you go. Okay, let's talk about process a little bit, the boring stuff. You weren't going to go the Amazon route, correct? From our prior discussions,
yeah.
Because we've seen some of those Amazon publications. Like
they're awful.
They're like illustrated. What the one guy called them? He called them like what's it called? Illustrated novels, like comic novels, that kind of stuff.
It's like a little flat book of crap. Like if you have a story that you're invested enough to get it out there, like put the time and effort and
make a real book.
Create a nice book, like a beautiful book. Right. Yeah, that was very important to me. I wanted to make sure that there was artwork in there, because like I'm not a big reader. I try, but I'm not a big reader. So I wanted to make sure that there was the pictures in there, to give you a sense of the story. That always helps. And I wanted it. I wanted it.
We are definitely from Pittsburgh.
I'm a simple girl. But yeah, I made the investment and I went through a publisher so I could tell them exactly how I wanted this book, how I wanted it to look. I wanted a hardcover. I wanted, the jack. I wanted a certain font. A different print. Mm-hmm. I wanted full say on all that. So I did make the investment to do it, because it's a first time author,
and plus you retain all rights that way.
Correct? So when we start the TV show
or movie,
call me. Yinzers Sex in the City. Like, tell me that wouldn't get viewers.
Especially, it's funny because I think a lot of folks in a lot of towns, especially the neighboring cities like Cleveland, Columbus, Baltimore, they know of the Yinzer thing. Mm-hmm. Now, they may get a laugh at Pittsburgh's expense in their brain, but it isn't like that Yinzer thing has just stayed here. The legend of it has, it's left Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, Yinzer is worldwide. We got all the all the little, anywhere you see like a little
pocket.
Yeah,
areas.
What they got a Steelers bar over by like the Vatican and wherever the hell that is across the world. I'm blonde.
I don't know if they have a copy of this in the Vatican bookstore, but nothing would surprise me at this moment. Nothing would surprise me. I'm sure they got more salacious stuff in the basement of the Vatican.
Oh, I'm sure
that's what they hear.
Uh-huh.
Okay. The editing process. So you write the book, you finish your first draft, which had to be pretty exciting, right? When it was, it was time to bring an editor in. Now, did you understand that process going in, or did you figure it out? Because I would be naive enough and stupid enough to write my first draft and go, oh, it's my opus is fucking done. And I would be stupid. I mean, because the first thing you're thinking is, now I have to bring someone in to tear apart all my work, which has got to be a little humbling.
Yeah. No, I knew. I was like, no, it can't. The way I write and the way I talk is not.
Were they grammatically correct?
Yeah. And so I was like, no. I was like, I'm gonna need to get a editor. I'm gonna need to pay the bitch. So yeah. So I went through actually like 3 editors on this thing.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So the first one was one girlfriend of mine, and we went through about 10 chapters, and she would go through it and fix the grammatic mistakes, but then she would go and she would send me things like, okay, how can we add more detail here?
Yeah.
Well, how can we describe this better? Do we need to change the name here, so it sounds a little better?
Okay.
And so we did about 10 chapters back and forth, and then she went and dropped out. So then I had to get another editor who is she's actually my director on a film I'm in. And she went through and did my whole book for me, and we had to start from the beginning again because I felt like it all needed to sound good with the same editor. So we started back from the beginning again and went through it, the same way. And she would send me notes, let's change this, let's add something here. What can we, do here? And went through all that thing. And then when I went through the actual publisher, then the publisher had like their good critiquing editor that's like by the Chicago book standards or whatever. And then they went through the final.
Was there a lot of changes in in the final edit? Did she find a lot of things?
No, not that much. But they, but some things like, the way we Yinzers talk, I had that in the book. Like things are in pronounced in the book the way a Yinzer's going to say it, like a whoosher. And they're like, what the hell's a whoosher? I'm like, it's WOOSHER. That's correct. That's correct by Yinzer standards. I don't care about your Chicago.
Oh my God, that's hysterical. But was it difficult at times at any point to have your stuff critiqued like that?
Well, of course. You want to. Well, I didn't get too mad about it because I know that I'm not politically correct on all things. So when there was certain things brought to my attention, like I was told, I couldn't like little people. I was calling them by a certain name that is not appropriate now. And, telling the story, it flowed like, oh yeah, this little person, da 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 da. And they're like, April, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You're going to get canceled. You have to,
different landscape.
You have to use a different name than this. And I'm like, no, like, what are you talking about? It's funny. This is comedy. And they're like, no, you can't do that.
So now we have rules in comedy.
Yeah. So now there's,
it's crazy.
It's hard, but but it's, I want to be respectful of all people. So
certainly.
Like, it took me a minute, and it's like, okay, it's still a funny story, give the respect where the respect is due. And, you have to change some things. That's fine.
If the ultimate goal was to get the book published, and that's the goal at hand, and they're not asking for huge changes. I mean, to do that type of stuff makes sense. Yeah.
There's still enough raunchy, taboo, crazy stuff in the book that something little like that is not taking away from it.
Yeah, I tell you, oh man, you were locked in a prison you were locked in a abandoned prison, abandoned penitentiary. You were locked in the jail cell there by your date on Halloween. Yeah. And he wasn't coming back.
It wasn't on Halloween, but it was like, it was near Halloween that he took me down there, and for like 20 minutes he didn't come back. Yeah, fucking asshole. Like, why I'm not dead in a ditch somewhere, I'll never know. But yeah, so I had, a buddy, and it's like, when you lived in those small, I dared to go out of Pittsburgh. to go out with a West Virginia guy, which was just bad enough. And, small town, they all freaking know each other. So he knew a guy whose uncle owned the penitentiary. They were opening up in a couple weeks for Halloween. And they're like, oh, okay, well, let's go explore, because I love all things spooky. And when I'm like, let's go. For sure. So, like, oh, come on, we'll have some beers, whatever. So we go in there, and we're like, they turn off the lights, and we're walking around. He shoves me in there, and I'm like what? Yeah, okay, see ya, bye. They're drinking in the back for 20 minutes. I'm sitting in a cell, like listening to the freaking ghosts of whoever's passed in the other cells around me. Like, holy shit, this is where I die, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, the crazy part about that is, at some point in your brain, you had to have thought, what if he just like leaves me?
Yeah. These are the mistakes
It's a
we
moment.
make when we're young.
Oh, the follies of youth. Yes.
My mom read my book.
Oh, how'd that go?
I mean, you want to talk Yinzer? My mom is the Yinzer. I mean, we were raised down McKees Rocks. She always has like her Newports on her and her, her Miller High Life. Like she is like the typical Yinzer. And she was like, "Oh my God," she's like, "You wrote a book. I'm so proud of you." I'm like, "Well, thanks, Ma." I'm like, "You can't read that book." She's like, "Oh no, I'm gonna read that book." I'm like, "Ma," I'm like, you can't read that book. There's a lot of sex in there. There's a lot of BJs in there. I'm like, you can't read that book. She was like, "I'll read it and I'll pretend that, it's not you." I'm like, "Oh, okay, Janice. All right." So do that. And, and she's reading these stories and she's like, "What? Like how are she's like, how are you? I'm disappointed in you. Like, how are you not dead? Why did you do those things?" I'm like, "Ma, like these are the mistakes that you make that turn you into the person that you are today." She's, "Oh my goodness." She's like, "But I was laughing." She was like, "I was laughing the whole time." I'm like, "All right, Mom, like, you know way too much about me now."
Oh, the reviews online are great. I mean, you got to feel pretty encouraged by that.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, all I've ever wanted was to make people laugh. That's always my thing. Whenever I go into somewhere, I just love making people laugh, and that was the goal of the book. Bring some laughter into this shitty world at times, and so I knew that it was, I was going to have a certain audience. Not everyone's going to like this book, but I mean, like, my audience is like the single girl, and like every, single girl has their dating horror story. And anyone that has that is going to, enjoy this book. And also I hope that,
that would be most.
Yeah. And also, I hope that men enjoy the book, too. Just like I enjoyed Tucker Max's book about him.
I found it hysterical.
Yeah, about him, like, banging chicks. I'm like, I want, men to read mine and be like, that's fucking hilarious,
Yeah, what I liked about, and I hope I phrased this right, because I don't want to butcher this. What I liked about the book was its honesty and it's authentic. That absolutely is done conversational. But the thing I like the most is, yes, there's a lot of sex in there. And some of the descriptions of the sex is pretty freaking funny. But aside from that, there's like the story weaved in, which was solid. That was really solid. So there was substance. It wasn't a book on sex just for the purpose of being just sexual.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? Mm-hmm. So that's why I was pleasantly surprised. Not that I expected a bad book. I just expected something different than actually what I got, and I was pleasantly surprised.
No, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. And I will tell you, I don't know at this point, I don't know how much creativity is left in Hollywood, my friend. But if someone would grab a hold of this on premise alone, there's definitely a film/TV, something could be contrived from this.
Oh, for sure.
There's no question.
I'm in the film community, and so I see the different projects that are going on, and I've been working on Mayor Kingstown downtown, and so I always have discussions, and my boyfriend's a director, so me and him are always talking, and yeah, there is no like creativity left in Hollywood. It's all these recycled Disney and Marvel movies and CGI, and nothing is original anymore. And I put out a video, as like a little YouTube video to promote the book a little bit. And it's just, all that was a whole laughter track. There was like a 10-minute video, and just, I mean, people are cracking up after. I'm like, yeah, like, give me a chance. I'll get your audience. We just need, if I could find a way to get this to a bigger audience, I know it would be successful.
Yeah. The fact that you are willing to be that authentic, which I think a lot of people, I would have to see, I'm not a female, but I would have to think there's a lot of women that read this and can find so many, things that happen to them, so many associations with them. You just have the courage to put it out there.
Well, you have to make fun of yourself first. Yeah,
no doubt.
With comedy.
No doubt.
I think that's what makes comedy work. I was just talking with a buddy of mine last night. We were shooting a film, and he wanted to make a comedic short film. And he was like, he's like, I can't do comedy. And I'm like, I think the number one rule of comedy is that you have to make fun of yourself first off. If I would have went into this book just dissing men and just like making fun of them and not holding myself accountable for the stupid stuff that I did, I don't think it would have been as well received as it was. But the fact that I'm making fun of myself, and that's fine. And you can look at me as I'm a slut or a whore or whatever. But I mean, that was also years and years and years ago, and I have used that and I've learned and I've grown from there. It's made me into the person I am today.
Well, the terminology is ridiculous because, it always fascinated me just in the dating world in general. It's like men can go out and conquest as often as possible and they're elevated when they do it socially. And women are not permitted to do that. They did it. You just never heard about it. But it was done. And I'm guessing that, a lot of people, a lot of women are going to read this book and find similarities to their story. And probably a lot of them are wishing they had the courage to do something like this, to actually get this out. Because I'm sure there's a shit ton of funny stories out there in the ether.
Well, that's it. After people were reading my book, they were like, oh, well, I got a story for you. And that was it. It all flowed. And I was like, if there was ever
how good is that, though, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Like that no one's perfect. No one has like the perfect sex life and the perfect dating life, everything. Like there's going to be, life is full of, craziness. But yeah, it was like, each one of my girlfriends was like, oh, this story, I got a story for you. Let me tell you about this guy. And I'm like, tell me. I'm like, maybe you'll make the sequel. So, oh yeah.
What do you find was the hardest process for this? Was there any difficult part of the process for you?
I've always been a pretty like open person in that like I never gave a fuck what anyone thought of me. I always, did whatever, dressed however I wanted. Maybe a little part of me was worried that it might come back to me. I might be judged a little bit for my stories, but again, I just look at it as, that was the past and it's made me into the person I am today. So I always try to, look at it as a good thing or a learning experience. But yeah, nothing was really, I don't want to say, once I figured out how to write the book, like the short story form, everything flowed. Cause I've been telling these stories for years and they always get laughs. I never get, no one's ever like, oh, you're disgusting or you're morally reprehensible or, I never gotten any of that.
I think that's because it's just normal. I mean, it's always happening with most people. It's just that most people don't have the gumption to talk about it or especially put it into print. So it's a very sociable book. Now there is, and conversely, men can read this book and they, in their own mind, can go, yeah, I've had some doozies myself. Like, I think it makes you re-examine some of the shit you kind of been through.
Oh yeah.
Dating
is a crazy thing because I mean everyone wants to be loved. We all want to find that that special someone, and it's like and then when you get paired with someone that isn't right, that's where the comedy ensues, and you can look at it from like a a shitty place, and you can oh, men suck stuff. You could look at it that way, or you can look at it as that wasn't my guy. My guy's out there. I'm gonna have fun with all the wrong ones. And then once I started looking at it that way, when I was getting to like the end of the book, I kind of was like, I was on a quest. I was like, I had a bunch of stories, but I needed a couple more, and I was like, okay. I was like, let me go out and find stories now. So then I got myself onto like some kink sites. And I met some like doozies on there, and it was like strictly but then I stopped looking at like, I'm trying to find a relationship. At that point, it was like, I'm looking for stories. I'm looking, this is business. So then I went into it like that. And it was like when I stopped looking for relationship and started just focusing on like having fun and like getting stories, then that's when I found my guy who I'm with now.
Right on.
The first relationship that I've ever had. Like we're on like,
and that wasn't, you were not with him at the time this was written.
Because,
no. Yeah, because it was that you could tell.
Well, he's the last story in the book.
Right.
So yeah, I started seeing him, right in the
end of your writing.
End of the writing, yeah. That's when I was like looking for stories. So he was going to be the last guy because I knew that I was like, I need one more crazy story to end this book. And I was like, he's gonna be kink master, 101. I'm gonna get some crazy because he's such an idiot. When I first started talking to him,
Poor guy's not here to defend himself.
I know. When I first started talking to him, he's so artistic and he's way smarter than I am. I tell him all the time, I'm like, I don't know why you're with me. You're way too smart. He can quote like Shakespeare and all these old writers and like these old movies. He's like, oh, you haven't seen this movie from 1903 that starred this person? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? And so when we first started,
so he paid attention in schools.
He wrote his first. He said he wrote like a novel when he was like in high school or something. Like craziness. He's crazy smart, crazy artistic. I mean, if you look at my Instagram or whatever, the photos he takes, the films he does, the art he makes, it's just crazy. Everything he does, it's just art. And so when I first started talking to him, he was, I guess I was telling him about the book, and I was telling him about like, some of my crazy adventures, like being like, oh, like what kind of sex stuff are you into? And he started like quoting like Marquis de Sade to me. And I was like, okay, I have to look that up. And, like kink master from like 1700s, like all kinds of crazy shit. And I'm like, all right, I'm like, this guy's kind of interesting. So I'm like, I'm going to go and I'm going to fuck this guy. I'm going to get a crazy story. And then that's it. And then, of course, he flips the script on me because I went into it being like, this guy is nothing. I'm going to use him for a chapter in my book. And then he turns around and is like, freaking Mr. Romantic.
See?
Turn my world.
Got caught.
Shit.
They got caught. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Was there any chapter of this book that when you were done, you were not sure you were going to put it in? Or were you pretty resolute that each one belonged there and you were comfortable with it?
I had to change. We all have those 3 loves that are in our lives. The first one that...
John, right? Is John?
The Mr. Perfect chapter.
Yeah. And names are all changed, so I'm
probably
screwing with your brain right now.
No. The Mr. Perfect chapter. That guy still messages me every once in a while just to see if I'm happy. Like just to be like, I'm still here, just in case you want to, come back, cheat on your boyfriend or whatever. He just like every so often. I'm like, no, I'm good. That was a ridiculous chapter to write because it wasn't as funny as much as, but it was important to be in the book because he was an important part of my life in that, like I was obsessed with him. I was obsessed with this guy. And, and I didn't know what love and what all that meant when I was so young. So I was afraid to put that one in but it had to be in the book. And then the other chapter was the MMA Guy.
Yeah.
And I had to rewrite his story because when I first wrote his story, we had ended our little relationship or whatever you want to call it on bad terms.
Okay. And
then later on, we started going to the same gym. And so we kind of
awkward, huh?
So yeah. So now he was on my turf at my old gym and then he left the gym and then I left my gym and I went to his gym. So now I'm on his turf. So I kind of had to like make amends with him. And so when I first wrote the story, it was coming from a bad place, just like, ugh, I hate this guy. He's horrible and this and this is how he screwed me over. And, and then I made amends with him. And so I looked at the story again and I was like, I don't see it from a bad place anymore. I see it as it didn't work out. It wasn't supposed to work out. And so now I need to change it. So I did have to, that one was a tough one. That was the 2-Buck Chuck chapter. So yeah, I did have to that was the one that I had to like kind of completely rewrite.
Are there stories you left out?
Oh, I have plenty of other stories if there ever wants to be a sequel.
Are you going to do another one?
I don't know because unless I can get this one to a bigger audience where it gets like some kind of recognition.
It's a lot of work.
It's so much work and I'm not the kind of person that's like, go buy like I hate being that salesman. I hate I have to put up stuff and being like, oh, go spend your hard-earned money on my book type of thing. And, even though I'm not making any money, but I hate people. I hate asking people for things. So it's hard. So, but I definitely have, it's just like freaking clockwork. One of my buddies, he's in another jiu-jitsu gym and, he got his brown belt now I've outed myself, but okay. But so, but I went and I congratulated him, and I was like, oh, congrats on getting your brown belt. And we were like chatting, and and he has a girlfriend, and I was like, so glad that this worked out. You got a girl, I got a guy, it all worked out. He's like, yeah, it took long enough. And I was like, I put the conversation on my Instagram, but I was like, you gotta fuck a lot of frogs in order to find your prince. And he was like, hey, he's like, I'm not a frog. And I was like, you're not a frog. That's because I only blew you. I didn't fuck you. And he was like, oh no, we fucked. And I was like, I don't remember that. I would have remembered that. And he was like, oh no, like we went upstairs to your bedroom and we had sex. And I was like, bro, we did not have sex. I would have remembered that. I would have put you in the book. And he was like, I am 100% certain that we had sex. And I'm like, for the life of me, I cannot remember having sex with him. I only remember blowing him, and it was a pity blow because I felt bad for him. So I invited him over one night to just, cheer him up. And so that was the only, I remember he was like, oh no, like we definitely had sex. You were wearing a dress. I remembered your lower back tattoo. And I was like, for the life of me, I cannot remember having sex with this guy. So like, there's a story right there. So there's definitely stories that like I forgot about.
Oh man. So let me ask you this. Was it, when you wrote the book, was there excess stories out there and then you had to choose the strongest ones, or did you just write it like chapter after chapter just came to you?
I wrote down, I went down my number list.
Did you make your list?
I made my list. As much as I could remember, and that was it. And then like I put the guys' names, and then next to it I put like, what defined them, like MMA guy, West Virginia guy, small dick guy, like too big dick guy, like, a black guy, army guy, like, and then I was like, okay, like remembering their stories. I'm like, okay, that was a funny, that I could tell a story with that. That was a funny story. This was a funny story. This one, I don't even remember that guy. Like, so you have to. You
made your list.
I had to make my list. Yeah.
Okay. So
that was a long list, and I know I was missing some.
And the ones that didn't make it, you got left on the cutting room floor.
That's it.
So, but you obviously have to be. I think you should be happy with I think you should be happy with the way the book came out, the art of the book, and how it's been received. I mean, I'm not looking at your sales numbers; that's not my business. But I will tell you, I mean, the reviews speak a lot. Yeah, for sure. You know? And it reads really conversational. It's an easy read, and I mean that in a complimentary way. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. It's not one of those books that it's hard to get through. Yeah, it reads well, and there's also good stories in there. Lots of sex, but there's good stories that support the sex. If it makes any sense, it isn't a book for sex purposes. Mm-hmm. I think. Yeah, how it read to me, but I'm fascinated by the process of it. I just think the editing thing would be gut wrenching. You put your heart and soul in something, and then you had 3 editors. Oh, for sure.
Holy
like shit.
Especially after that first edit, and you get back we were doing it on Windows, whatever. So I go and I send it over, and then you get it back, and it's just red lines, underlined.
That's gotta be demoralizing.
Notes.
Right?
I'm like, oof. I'm like, all right, this is gonna be a process. Yeah.
Ever at any point in that process you were gonna quit? Were you ever frustrated at any point?
No, not at all. It was already in the works. I was already doing the work. I've never been afraid of hard work. Mm-hmm. So, no. Let's get it done.
And obviously your employer was fine with it.
Oh, yeah, they don't know. They don't know.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, they're so great. But yeah, like I'm at a front desk at a law firm. So there's not, I have things I have to do, but a lot of days I'm sitting up there, playing on Facebook and whatnot. Yeah. And I was like, I could just do this here. So just whatever, I'm tight. And it looked like I was doing work. So it just worked out that way.
All worked out.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely kept the book from from most of the people. There's some office ladies that I told about the book. I got this one office lady. She's so freaking cute. Just a little old lady. And she was like, and she's so supportive of me. She loves that, you know, I'm happy with Matt. She loves that I wrote a book. She loves that I do movies and everything. Like, she's so supportive. She was like, I bought your book. And I was like, oh, I was like, Mary Ann. I was like, don't read that book, hon. You know, like, you're almost at retirement. I don't want to get you there, you know, sooner. And she was like, oh no. She's like, I'm going to read that. She's like, I'm waiting until we go on vacation. I'm going to read that on the beach. And I was like, oh, I was like, Joanne, I was like, you're going to think less of me. And she was like, I was like, there's a lot of sex in that book. She was like, that's why I bought the book. I'm like, bitch.
Of course she did. Of course she did. What's been surprising so far in regards to the way it's been received? Any surprises?
That it's been as well received as it has, because I figured I'd be getting a lot of, you know, reviews that are just like, oh, you're a whore. Oh, you know, are
really?
You? I mean, that's what I figured that I would be
in
getting.
2022?
Yeah. Yeah,
wow,
because
okay.
I mean that's how it was on the
a Post-Gazette, yeah.
The Post-Gazette
it's the
review.
Audience, though.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a couple like anonymous reviews that I got on Amazon that they didn't put anything, but they put like a 2-star or a 3-star. But I was waiting for more of those, more being like, you know, like, oh, how can you live with yourself? You know, like you live in your. You know, I was waiting for more of that. I got one review from a woman that wasn't happy that I referred to the male member as a certain, I think I compared it to like a demigorgon or something. And she was like, can we stop, you know, appropriating the male, you know, penis as, you know, something that's not or whatever. And I was like, that's like the best review that I've gotten. And that was a bad review. But I mean, like, if I read that review on someone's, I want to read that now. Like, his dick's a demigorgon? Like, give me that book. I got to read that. That was my bad review. Like, that was great.
Anytime I have someone ever that starts using, what's that word, appropriating? Yeah, as soon as I hear that, my mind just tunes out. I'm like, here we go. Someone is now offended by some terminology somewhere.
Yeah,
and
I was
holy shit.
If I was, you know, a black man, like that's the one, that's the standard you want, the appropriation you want, you know.
Yeah, we're still with all the shit that's going on in the world today, we're still hung up on the dumbest stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like really. I mean, at some point in time, like, you know, are there more important things to be pissed off about than someone else writing a book?
Yeah. Everything was done in a respectful manner. You know, like I have a foreword in the book, you know, explaining, you know, like I wish these guys well. Like this was all done with respect, and this was all done with comedy in mind. You're
not outing anyone specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm not saying to any of the guys that they were, you know, awful, horrible type things. Like it's all I wrote this all in good fun. It was all to make people laugh. So, you know.
Oh, it's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely funny. What would it take for you to do, or have you thought about it? What would it take for you to do the second one? Do you have a benchmark of sales? Or do you have an idea of certain things have to happen before I will go do it, or you're just undecided? Right
mean, if I had, if I got like some kind of, if I got this into the hands of the right person, and it just, you know, and I saw that it was received and people wanted it. You know, like. So
what's the next step? If that was to happen, would one of the major publishing houses then pick it up? Is that how it works?
I would think so. I would think I would have a better chance at getting an actual publishing deal when you have one book already and it does well. Then yeah, you can present that to the publishing company, and they're like, oh, this one, she has a following. She can make us some money. Like, let's, you know, invest in that. That's I mean, that's how it would be. But yeah, I have ideas for it. Like this could have been a whole thing. Like, first of all, either, you know, the stories that, like, Burgh Blonde and Friends. Because now I got all these girlfriends and all these guy friends that are like, oh, let me tell you my dating horror story. So I have all those stories that I could share, other people's stories. But then also I have, you know, what happens when Burgh Blonde finds love. And, you know,
I can take it so many different directions.
Yeah. Now that I've been through all the dating nightmares, and I went through all these men, and now I finally found my, you know, Prince Charming.
Right.
What happens now? I mean, I'm still that girl, you know, but now I got to be good. I'm in a relationship, and, you know, and my relationship isn't boring. You know, we definitely have our own set of stories. You know, he's, you know, our sex life is great, you know, and like we're always doing different things. So there's a whole story there. So it could be taken so many different ways if someone wants to give me a chance.
So internet dating, let's talk about that a little bit. So did it start with Match.com or did it start with Grindr? Was it through social media?
Grindr's for the gay men.
I don't know. Grindr, Tinder. I don't know.
No, it definitely started with like Match.com and Plenty of Fish.
Plenty of Fish.
Because Plenty of Fish was
actually
actually
a Christian one, right?
No. Plenty of Fish was a good one because it was like Match.com, but it was free.
Okay.
So you could put your pictures there, and you could put a lot of details down. So that was a good one, but it got a lot of like bad people on there. So you had to know when to like weed out the,
because it was free.
Yeah, that's it, because it was free. I was on Match for a little bit, but yeah, you don't want to keep paying for something like that. And then, as times got, more advanced, then you had the Tinder and the,
Grindr.
Grindr's the gay one. Hinge.
I don't know.
Hinge and like
Hinge
and there's a B one, something B, a bagel one, something bagel. I don't know. There's all kinds of different ones. There was all kinds of different ones. Yeah.
Okay, so did you start on Match?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were younger. I mean, I would imagine that would have been 10 years ago, right?
Well, that was Match is when I met Mr. Perfect, which was one of the first chapters in the book.
Okay.
So, I mean, I was around, like 21 in my first apartment at the time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, it's such an ordeal to be, like I tell women.
Did you ever do speed dating?
No, I never did speed dating.
Okay.
No, I never found any of those really around us, like advertised or anything. But, I always did, for the longest time, I did some kind of like martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're single and you're going out on these dates and you're meeting these guys.
Probably a good idea.
It's a good idea. So I tell all women, please come down to True Believer or any martial arts gym, take some jiu-jitsu if you're going to go out on these dates. Because, my God.
Safety is certainly a concern.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, so outside of being locked in an abandoned prison cell, were there moments that were dicey for you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, when you're doing these dating sites, you don't know what to look for. So that's when, you would get like catfished. People would put up pictures that were from 10 years ago and you wouldn't know. So then when you would meet them, they look completely different.
Oh, come on, let's talk about those stories. You got to have a couple of those.
Yeah. I had one guy who he was I think I met him on like Plenty of Fish, and he was like great looking guy. We had like a lot of things in common, but I had to do like a non-smoker because I can't stand smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Someone like someone that worked out, took care of themselves. And so I met this one guy. He had great looking pictures. We texted for a little while, and it was like, okay, let's start the date. We go and we met at an Italian restaurant, and I got there and I'm looking for him, and he's like, oh, I'm here. And I'm like, well, I don't know where you were. And it was like this big, like 300-pound guy that came out, and I was like, I didn't recognize you, buddy. And he's like, yeah. And he's just like going like, like nothing, like there's nothing wrong. Like the pictures he showed me were like, yeah, like 10-year-old pictures. Like he looked completely different. It's not like I'm not against it. Like you're
attracted to who you're attracted to.
Yeah, but like,
and no false advertising.
Yeah. Like, no, well, I mean, you need to, if you're starting off on a lie, it's not going to work. Like I'm not going to automatically fall in love with you.
It was a bad sign when he said he was here and you couldn't see him.
Yeah. I didn't notice that mountain over in the corner. I'm sorry. But I mean, I gave him like the benefit of the doubt because we did have, good conversation. But then we leave the restaurant and he pulls out a cigarette and I'm like, bro, why would you lie?
Lying through his teeth.
Lying through your teeth.
Like, what is the, so I always, because I after my second divorce, I was on Match for a while. I think I was on another one that was kind of pricey. Didn't work out well. It was, there
was OkCupid.
No, it wasn't that. It was, eHarmony.
Oh yeah. Okay. I did that one once.
But I went on a couple where, and I journaled, and I went on a series of dates, usually one-time dates, and it just was interesting. And I got a book in that if I ever decided to write it.
Yeah.
Not quite as descriptive as this, but interesting. But the lying thing was a thing.
Yeah.
Like that was really, and you usually hear men being the main culprits, but I can tell you there was some women that really And it usually was weight related. With men, I've heard with men, it's often hair related, weight related too, but hair related or habit related. But with women, it's usually weight.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've seen it all the time, and like I never was like, I've always been a big girl, and yeah, like I want someone to like me for me. So I'm not going to put up like this, this picture of me being like skinny, like cropped and skinny. Like, no, you gotta love. I'm a big girl. You gotta love the big girl. So I never knew the appeal in lying about that, but oh yeah, like lots of women, and now I imagine it's like a million times worse because you have all those beauty filters and all those photoshopping things. So I imagine that they're all, you need to know what to look for.
Yeah, and here's the crazy part. I think that there's even something deeper going on there. I think naturally you have the deception for you. You're going to meet someone, you're now deceived, and you're pissed off, right? Or vice versa. Let's say it was the woman putting a filter on. What I've noticed was now, I think that the self-delusion is at a new level. Like I think back when I was doing that, they were lying. They knew that they were touching up their stuff and lying about their weight. But I think now reality is a funny thing. Like I think people look at themselves in the mirror, and they actually, because of all these filters and the ability to moderate yourself visually, I think they actually believe there's someone they're actually not.
Yeah.
In certain instances, which is fucking scary.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing. When they actually believe that they are the filtered version of what they create.
Yeah.
And not what they're actually seeing in the mirror.
Yeah.
That's where I think, if I was out there today, I think that would be the biggest thing.
I don't know what I would do. I think I got out of the dating scene like just in time. Like now.
When's the last time you were on an online date?
I mean, that was
how many years ago?
That was before Matt. I mean, that's going back. I've been with Matt over 2.5 years now. So I want to say, like 2.5, 3 years ago.
Okay. Did you date during the pandemic?
No, I was with Matt.
Okay, so you guys been doing that.
Yeah.
Good deal. Luckily,
yeah,
I've heard some crazy nutty shit during. I mean, how'd that work, right?
Zoom dates and stuff. I don't know.
Zoom date. Zoom date.
I don't know.
What's a Zoom date?
I guess, you would just go.
But could you imagine if you had not met him and you would have gone through the pandemic? I mean, you probably got this book would probably be this thick, maybe.
I would be dead because I would have had COVID so many times.
Oh my God!
Yeah, no, I can't even.
Did you have reckless abandon in the beginning when you were younger, or were you always very careful? Like, that's a kind of a personal question, but I mean, in terms of like STDs or AIDS or all that stuff.
Oh no, I'm like I've always been very careful. I mean, me personally, whenever was with, like, I don't want no cooties. No.
Yeah, right.
But I am amazed at the.
Well, we all do young and dumb things when we're young.
Yeah. No, I've always been like really. I mean, of course, there's probably been one or two slip ups or whatever. But I've always been really careful with that. Put on your fucking rubber. I don't want nothing from you. But I'm always amazed at the amount of men that tried to get away with not putting one on. And like a lot of I did like a lot of one night stands, and it's like, oh, it's uncomfortable. I can't wear it or whatever. And I'm like, well, then you're not getting near the goalie here. Like, you have to. You don't know me. I don't know you. Yes, I'm being a slut and I'm sleeping with you on the first date, but still, we need to be. You need to be careful.
I don't want to die over it.
I don't want to die. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing that is so. I don't know. I think when how do I say this? It's so unnatural to stop the intimacy and then apply the prophylactic. It's almost like, that's the one thing you never see it in the movies.
Yeah,
you never see it in television. You never see it. So as a young kid growing up, you knew they were there and you knew you had to do it. But like, how does that work? Because like in the movies, they don't do. They just go right at it. Like you don't know any better.
It's just implied. It takes the magic out of it, so that's why they don't put it in the movie. It
slows things down, yes, in reality, for sure. But if someone came to you and said, playing devil's advocate, you write this book, it's not a good example to younger girls as to how they should conduct themselves, or it's not a good example to younger people on how to behave because STDs are out there and so forth. What's your response to that stuff?
I mean,
no, I don't think anybody's probably even asked a question, but if someone did come to you and say that.
No, I mean that's valid. I was stupid and I made mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes as me. You should definitely, make sure that you're protected.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to be like me. I'm not that person anymore. If I could take back certain things, I would. I would be more careful. I tried to be safe, but there was definitely slip ups. I wish there wasn't. But
I think that's probably natural with most humans.
Yeah.
No one wants to really admit their mistakes or frailties, but I think that's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, we all make mistakes. Just have to get over it and admit.
I mean, I don't think though when you look at this in its entirety, this is just a journey, right? I mean, you wouldn't look at everything that went on here as a mistake, right?
No, I don't look at it like that at all. Just because, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have the attitude that I have without these things. Things happen in your life to get you where you have to be, and that was it. My journey was I always wanted to find love. Like that's the thing. Like everyone's getting hooked, everyone's getting married, everyone's having where's my guy at? Before I met Matt, I was 35. Where's my guy? I should be have a home and settled, by now. Like when's it going to happen for me? And
right.
It's just
Now you do some acting in Pittsburgh here. Well, you do acting period. You happen to be in Pittsburgh and you've done acting in Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah.
Talk to me about that. When did the interest for acting start for you?
I've always been, center of attention kind of whore like that. But I always did it when I was in school. I was always in, I was a cheerleader. I was in the plays, and musicals, drama club, thespian society, dance. I was in all of that. And, anything that can get me, front stage, I'm one of those. But you get out of school and you got to get the big girl job and you got to get, your place to live. So, those passions, those passions kind of like hit the, you put them away for a while.
Sure.
And so every once in a while I would see like a casting call down Pittsburgh. They would have the big cattle calls where you go down, be a background extra, get your paycheck. I'd do a couple of those, but I wasn't really doing anything with like lines, studying like that. And so one of my buddies on Facebook, he was in the Douglas Education Center and his script got chosen to be made into a short film. And I was like, if you ever need a trashy blonde, I was like, I'm your girl. And he was like, actually, I do need a trashy blonde neighbor. He's like, you want to try out for this? And I was like, yeah. And he sent me the script and it was like, I played it like a Peggy Bundy kind of role. And I auditioned for it and he was like, you're fabulous. He was like, you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, I want to do this. And that's what got me back into it. And then once I was in there, then, you start to meet people and
Certainly.
then they join this group and be in this filmmakers group and then, go to this mixer and then you start meeting people. And like right after that, I went to a mixer and I met director Mark Cantu and he was just starting his movie, casting for his movie Massacre Academy. And so he was like, he liked me and he was like, oh, I got a part. He was like, I'll send the script over to you. And he sent the script over and it was my 80s Barbie dream fantasy role. I'm an 80s baby. So I grew up with all those 80s horror movies and this was like perfect. This roller skating, blonde, crimped, hair, she gets murdered. I was like, this role is mine. I was like, you don't even know it yet. And he was like, well, send me over. He's like, do this monologue and send me over a tape. Boom, send him over a tape. And it wasn't until like a year later until he was like, okay, we got funding for it. We're actually making this thing. So I went and sent him over another tape and I was like, this is my role. I'm like, you don't know me. I was like, this is my role. I'm like, you don't have to pay me. You don't have to do anything. I'm like, but this is my role. So he gave it to me. And so that premiered last year. They're still looking for like distribution for it. There's a little fuzzy there, but I got to play, the 80s roller Barbie and I get stalked by the killer and I get like a gruesome death. And it's fabulous. It's everything that I wanted. And then I just worked, last night was our last night shooting his new movie, Wolf Hollow. So we were out till 1 a.m. last night shooting for that, and we had pyrotechnics.
I saw the video clip you posted
online.
Yeah. I still do my own stunts.
I do my own stunts, yeah. So I got to live my werewolf fantasy in that one. Yeah.
You familiar at all with the filmmaker Fred Vogel?
I've heard that name.
Yeah, he does. Did a lot of gore movies, but this last 2 years, he did his first, I guess you'd say, more mainstream movie called The Interview. I've had him on the podcast a couple times. He's from Pittsburgh, studied under. I think he actually studied from Tom Savini's school. I believe, and then he became a student there for a while, I believe, too. But he's big in that gore genre. Yeah, and
I love all those Tom Savini students.
Very interesting guy. Yeah, Fred Vogel. You should definitely check out his work. He's quite interesting. There's no doubt about that. The MMA also fascinates me. We have some multiple friends, Kama Worthy, and I think Adam Milstead, and a bunch. I know you touched on MMA and the sport, but when did it first take root for you?
I've always needed like some kind of hobby. So first I was doing.
This wasn't enough for you.
I need another hobby.
It's pretty busy in here.
I like to stay busy. I'll sleep when I'm dead. But when I moved out when I was 18. So my first hobby was pole dancing. So I went and I went to, it was a girls' fitness studio. Right. So I did that for a couple years. And then after that, I was like, I need something. I need to stay active. I need a gym or something. So then I went down to Fight Club Pittsburgh and I took boxing. So I did boxing there for like 7 years, and I met all those guys. That was like the height of Mark Cherico when he was champ around here. Cody Garbrandt and Akama Worthy was fighting all the time, and Adam right before he went to the UFC. And I just loved all those guys, but I was like the only girl, the constant girl that was there doing boxing. And Tom Yankello was my coach at the time, and then. Yeah, it's switched around a bit, but yeah, I loved boxing. That's such a good workout, but you need to know your strengths and your weaknesses, and I am just not built for boxing. Like, even though I love it, it really has to.
It's a brutal sport.
I'm really pretty, and like I was single, so like I can't be like showing up with like bruises all over my face and whatnot. So I mean, like I did a couple like little sparring matches and everything, and just you get punched in the face and it really just wakes you up. And so I mean, I did what I could with that, but I did not have the arm reach, like I could throw a punch, but I just did not have the arm reach. So like I was always getting like countered and just getting like punched, and it just wasn't my thing. So they were always like, you need to try jiu-jitsu. There was a big jiu-jitsu gym. Like, you gotta try jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, I don't want to roll around with sweaty men unless we're naked. I don't want that. And they're like, come on, like try it out. And so I was like, all right. I was like, let me try it out and also I'm one of those that like, I'm so competitive. And like boxing, you have nothing to show for it. You don't get no stripes or stars or anything unless you take a fight. And it was like, I wasn't good enough to take a fight. So like jiu-jitsu, they have the belt system. So I was like, okay. I was like, I could work up to goals. So I was like, I like that. So I was like, all right. I did my first time rolling, and it was like, you just heard, I was just screaming the whole time on the mat because I was so uncomfortable. You would do your moves, and just like, they'd throw you, it'd scream, you'd move this way, scream. But then, it got more comfortable, and then you moved up, and then you got your stripes, and then you moved up, you got your belts. And so jiu-jitsu's been my thing for the last 5 years now. Right on. So now I'm purple belt under Jake, I can't say his last name, McLeod, down at True Believer, and Mike Hulin. Right on. Down there. So a great gym.
Yeah. And it's I think a lot of discipline comes with that, with any martial art, but certainly a discipline. And that discipline certainly can be rubbed off on creating a book, because this takes discipline.
I'm all disciplined.
This takes a lot. This takes a lot naturally to get this done. I mean, I think anyone that can write a book is fascinating to me, because even if it ends up being a book that I wouldn't enjoy, maybe, the fact that they are willing to go through the process, because it's a process.
Oh yeah.
It's a process. Was it harder than you thought?
I mean, yes, because me, I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book in this much time, and then we're going to edit it. And like within 3 months, I'm going to start looking for a publisher. And then, by this time, I'm going to find the publisher. Boom, it'll be on bookshelves by this time. Like I had the whole timeline. And I was talking to my first editor about it. And she was like, it don't work that way. It don't work. She's like, don't put yourself on a timeline. She's like, you're going to have to, this is going to take more time. She's like, it's going to have time for me to edit it, to send it back to you, for you to send it back to me again, for me to re-edit, send it back to you. So yeah, it definitely, I was like, I wrote it, let's get it out there. And no, it took probably like another year for it to be like finally edited.
I believe it.
Yeah.
It's amazing, these authors who just crank work out. I mean, these more established authors, whether they're mystery writers or a lot of, like the military series, and it's almost like every year they're there. It's like this big volume. You're like, how are they doing it? It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I
mean, but I guess I'm there. I wondered, like, because that's why I asked you about ghostwriting. Like, there was no one else that actually, like, I think sometimes, if I'm not mistaken, authors will dictate things on audio tape, and then someone else will transcribe it. I think that's a process. Did you ever think about doing that at all?
No, because
you've heard of that though, right?
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I think that's how the celebrities always get their books out real quick.
You think?
Yeah, they do that kind of stuff. But no, I needed this to be these were my stories to tell.
Yeah, there's something cathartic about actually putting the words down yourself.
Yeah, and also I don't think I had to write. It has to be me, like every step in this book, because this is very authentic to Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I couldn't go and, tape record something and then have someone transcribe it, because they're not going to transcribe it the correct Yinzer way. They're not going to use, the way we talk.
Good point.
And it needed to be authentic.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be Burgh Blonde if it had proper grammar and, proper spelling.
No, it would not. No, it would not, my friend. I really appreciate you doing this. Did you have a good time?
Oh yeah, it's really fun.
Come back and see me again?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm blushing because the book is like, holy shit. The thing that struck me was like, because when I first got it, when I first came in, I started reading, like, ooh, that is like, she is not leaving. Nope, she ain't leaving. What? But when I actually read it, and then I read it about 1.5 times. So there's good stories there, funny effing stories. It's not a book of sex it's not a book of sex for the sake of sex. Yeah. Does that make any sense? Mm-hmm. That's the best review I can give you, is like there's substance there.
Yeah, I kind of wanted it to be, I had in mind Yinzer Sex in the City versus like 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
That's what I was kind of going for.
Well, I've never read 50 Shades of Grey, but I kind of know.
You don't need to. You don't need to. It's awful.
I think I kind of know the gist.
It was awful, but it was also groundbreaking in that women. I mean, even though that book got bad reviews because it didn't matter. It didn't matter because like women were interested. This is opening up a new thing for us. Like this is a new way of thinking. You telling me there's more to do in the bedroom than just missionary? Right. So it's like. Even though it was a bad book, it was also everyone fucking read it. Yeah. Yeah,
and I think that's what's refreshing about what you did, is that you put the authenticity there, and whether people want to admit it to themselves or not, there's a little bit of pretty much every woman in this book, unless she's a nun. But for the most part, there's a little bit of experience that you had, probably relatable to most women. Yeah. I think so.
For sure, yeah.
I would have to think so.
Every woman has, their crazy, cringy, nightmare date story, and
it's part of the human experience, right?
Yeah, I just kept track of mine, whereas other people just want to bury that. I'm like, no, let's put it out there and make some people laugh.
Right on. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
You got a great book. It's funny, and it's funny too. I mean, it's salacious, but it is funny. It is definitely funny.
You got to have me back on when you bring Milstead back, and we'll talk fishing and all the MMA team.
I am up for all kinds of interesting panel shows, so we will talk for sure. All right, thanks again. Everyone.
Thank you.
All right, friends, and the book, Burgh Blonde. Get it? You will laugh. I promise you. Thank you. We're out.